Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. Today's episode is going to be about 3D stereoscopic gaming, particularly focused on AMD HD3D. Now, I know we haven't really covered this topic in the past. We've talked mostly about NVIDIA's 3D vision. However, AMD does have their own stereoscopic 3D gaming ecosystem, and we're going to tell you guys how to set it up, as well as compare it to the solution from the green team. Now, for the hardware setup side of things, you do need some slightly different requirements versus 3D vision. For example, AMD doesn't produce their own glasses, so you're going to have to get a display that comes with glasses. Most displays that come with glasses, whether they're TVs, and HD3D does work on TVs, whether they're TVs or whether they're monitors, are going to have the necessary 3D technology built into them to run AMD HD3D. Basically, as long as the display is capable of running 3D Blu-ray or other 3D content, then it is 3D capable enough to use HD3D. Now, you also need a powerful enough Radeon graphics card in order to produce both the right and left eye images in order to game in stereo 3D. So I would definitely recommend, at the time of filming this, something from their 7000 series of cards if you want the best possible experience. Now, for our test setup today, we've also got an Intel X79 motherboard with 16 gigs of Kingston RAM, a 3930K 6-core processor, an SSD boot drive, and a 1200 watt power supply, all of this running on a Gigabyte X79A UD7 motherboard, and water-cooled by Corsair. Now, once you've configured all of your hardware, couple things: make sure you're using a high data rate connection in the latest AMD Catalyst driver. So by high data rate connection, I mean no HDMI, no single link DVI. You want dual link DVI or DisplayPort unless you're running at 720p, in which case HDMI is just fine. So the next thing you need to do is download the middleware. So we're using TriDef3D, and TriDef3D has a 14-day free trial. See, I've got threes on my mind now. Free trial, and the free trial allows you to, well, try it out before you actually buy. Once you've installed it, the setup process is quite simple. All you do is launch TriDef3D Ignition, or you can even launch the whole TriDef3D launcher so you can do movies or pictures or games. Then you do a scan on your computer, and it'll automatically pick up all the games that it sees itself as being compatible with. You can manually add games as well by just finding the executable. So in this case, we're going to be running Crysis for our demo today. And the last thing you need to do, not the last thing, sorry, not quite the last thing. The next thing you need to do is make sure your monitor or your TV is running at 120 Hertz. Now, if you have a TV that's like 120 Hertz clear motion, that doesn't necessarily mean it is a full 120 Hertz. You need to make sure it is a 3D compatible display, or you're probably not going to have any success. So in this case, this is a 120 Hertz panel. We make sure it's set to that. Then the last thing is to go into the tools and display settings of 3D Ignition and make sure that it is set up correctly. So we tried a number of different profiles before we found one that worked 100% in 3D. In this case, we went with left-right. Remember, there are different formats of outputting 3D to a display, and it depends on how your display interprets it. However, the software does come preloaded with a number of profiles, including a generic HD3D one under AMD. So once you've got all of that set up, all there is to it is to launch your game. So the launcher can actually even launch Steam games. So Crysis is a Steam game, and it kicks out this error, but it actually works, and we'll show it to you guys in just a moment. So I want to wrap this up with some actual live gameplay using HD3D. So we launched Crysis 1 using the middleware, and we are running it on our Samsung Series 9 SA950 display with the Samsung glasses. So let's sum this up in terms of performance. So we can run Crysis on high at 1080p in 3D, which actually is no mean feat even now. However, the challenge that we did run into is that we're using Crysis 1. We actually had trouble with some of the newer games, and that stands to reason because instead of like on the green side, where NVIDIA is the one building the glasses, building the software, building the graphics card, and certifying the display, on the AMD side, pretty much any 3D display and any third-party 3D glasses and then any AMD graphics card that supports 3D, and finally there's a third party working on the middleware, so you've got third-party software as well as 2 pieces of third-party hardware involved. The compatibility wasn't as comprehensive as you find with 3D Vision. So the flip side of that is that the flexibility in terms of the hardware you can use in the future is potentially much higher, because you're not even tied down just to 3D LCDs. You can also use a 3D TV or a 3D projector, whatever else the case may be. If you can get 3D glasses for it and you can hook up an AMD graphics card to it, you can use it in 3D. There are some caveats though. We actually did an HD3D video a while back that ended up, we were sort of wrong. We thought the only way to run HD3D at the time was to use HDMI, and the performance was not very good. Now that we're running it over dual link DVI, the performance is dramatically better than it was last time. So ultimately, here it is. Does it work? Yes. Is it perfect? No. But then I don't think anyone would argue that any stereoscopic 3D implementation is perfect. It is immersive. As long as you have glasses and a good quality display, then you're going to have a satisfying 3D experience in the games that you can get running. And I think that pretty much covers it. So, in summary, on the NVIDIA side, you've got this locked down hardware ecosystem that has its advantages of being compatible, but has the disadvantage of being locked down and very vendor specific. And on the AMD side, you've got this flexible approach that maybe hasn't got quite the deep level of maturity yet that it'll need in order to be a truly seamless gaming experience, but it does have that potential in the future. So you might as well, have the card that's capable of it anyway. Thank you for checking out this NCIX Tech Tips on how to set up AMD HD3D, and don't forget to subscribe.